good evening, and welcome to another edition of our Government at Work program. It's another wonderful Thursday evening here in the island of Nevis, and it's a time when we all look forward to another night of information as it pertains to the good governance of the CCM-led Nevis Island Administration. It is also a program designed to educate all citizens and residents of Nevis, especially those living in the Diaspora. It is important that you are kept abreast of the many positive developments that are taking place here on the island of Nevis. We are all well aware, of course, that there are some unpatriotic citizens who, for one reason or the other, prefers to indulge in fake narratives. But on this program, we make every effort to ask the right questions and get truthful answers that will give you a true reflection as to what's happening on the island of Nevis. We therefore look forward each week to go deep into discussions with the ministers of government, special advisors, permanent secretaries, department heads, as well as top officials from the various statutory corporations on the island of Nevis. This program, I remind you, is broadcast live on VON Radio every Thursday evening from 8 to 9:30 p.m. Then rebroadcast on Nevis Television on Sunday evenings from 8:30 p.m. It's a program brought to you by the CCM-led Nevis Island Administration and hosted by yours truly, Keith Scarborough. This and other Government at Work programs, as well as our Bird's Eye View programs, can also be seen on Facebook, YouTube, and the Nevis Television webpage. We shall take a short break, and when I return, I shall introduce my guests for this evening's program to you. So stay locked on to the powerhouse of the Eastern Caribbean, VON Radio, 860 AM.
So rise, St. Thomas is rise, St. James is put together and build your land. Rise, St. George's and St. Paul's together with St. John's. This land is enough for all to share. No reason to leave and go nowhere. Foreigners can come here from America and England. There is something mighty sweet about my land. And if the foreigners who live here can insist that it's here they're from, then I swear I'll never leave my native land. One people, one country.
Welcome back. Folks, I am pleased to have as my guest this evening Permanent Secretary in the all-important Ministry of Finance, Mr. Colin Dore. Mr. Dore, good evening and welcome once again to our Government at Work program.
Good evening, Mr. Scarborough, and good evening to the listening public. It's always a pleasure to be here to share information to you, the general public, as to what is happening in government, our projections, our plans as we roll into the 2025 budget period. And last year we presented our budget in December, which outlined the plans for the year, and so it's always a pleasure coming to share the insights, the thinking behind our plans and program as we roll out into the new year.
Sure, thank you for that. Now, before we go into our discussion this evening, Mr. Dore, could you outline for our listeners and viewers the various departments that fall under your responsibilities as Permanent Secretary of Finance?
The Ministry of Finance is really a very large and diverse ministry comprising both the Ministry of Finance and Trade. Mm-hmm. So the department falling under the Ministry of Finance obviously would be those departments that deal with government expenditure, revenue, and so on, because the role of the Ministry of Finance is really to account for the revenues of government and to ensure the recording of all expenditure for government. So the Treasury Department, the Inland Revenue, the Customs Department, you have the Department of Statistics, you have the Financial Services Department, the Nevis Investment Promotion Agency, and then you also have the Ministry and Department of Trade, which comprise the Nevis Craft House, Trade and Consumer Affairs Department, Supply Office, and the Small Enterprise Development Unit. You'll see all of these have one thing in common: they deal with money, they deal with the economy, and that's why they fall under the Ministry of Finance.
That's quite a bit, Mr. Dore, and I wanted to give our listeners and viewers an idea of the kind of responsibilities that lies on your shoulders at this time, because 2025 seems like it is going to be a challenging year for all, including the Nevis Island Administration. So are you ready for the challenges in the year ahead?
Well, it's 2025 is not unusual when you compare to the other years. Since we came out of COVID, We have been getting better and better bit by bit, year after year. There are some things that we still need to deal with, as you'll see when we go through the length of the interview. But I believe by and large we can say we are turning the tide and we are seeing signs of improvement in all major areas across the economy.
Great. Anyway, while this year may be challenging, there are also some exciting times ahead for the island and people of Nevis, which we shall discuss tonight. And we do have quite a lot to discuss, so let's get right into it. And I want to start with this. Based on the 2025 budget proposals, this will be a year for the CCM-led Nevis Island Administration to try and get its revenue collections and its expenditure on a more realistic path. And to do that, a number of new initiatives were outlined in the just concluded budget presentation delivered by the Minister of Finance Premier, the Honorable Mark A.G. Bantley. I want to take a closer look at some of those initiatives this evening and the impact they could have on the Nevis economy. But first, I want to look at some of the initiative that was put forward by the federal government to see what impact, if any, it could have on the Nevis economy. The first one I want to look at is the lowering of the VAT from 17% to 13% for the first 6 months of 2025. Nevis does its own VAT collection, so my question to you is this: how will that deduction affect the budget proposals for 2025?
Well, it will definitely affect it. VAT is a very important revenue stream for the administration. VAT at 17%, we projected our revenue based on the 17%. It has been reduced to 13%, so obviously there will be some loss of revenue. Having done our analysis, what we did recognize though is that the first 6 months, which is normally the tourism period, the VAT and tourism-related activity, the hotels and so on, didn't change because that VAT is fixed at 10%. So on that side, there would not be a large reduction. But on the other areas, such as services, the customs and so on, there will be some impact. So we put all that together and we recognize that there may be a 5 to 10% loss in revenue for that 6 month period based on that decision to reduce the VAT. Initially we thought it would have been much larger, but when we really do the analysis and recognize that the revenue generating sectors during that 6 months is really tourism, which the VAT is fixed and they did not get adjusted by the 13%.
Oh, okay. Now, the federal administration also introduced a $250 payment over the next 6 months to persons making $5,000 or less. What effect, if any, do you expect that to have on our economy here in Nevis, whether positive or negative?
Well, any money that you put into the economy obviously going to have a spiral multiplier effect. And therefore, by putting $250 in the hands of those persons who, for lack of a better term, at the lower end of the income ladder, to them $250 is quite a lot, and it would go a long way to do a number of things for them. I note though that the federal government stipulation that utility bills and food were the only items to be purchased. So we are hoping then that if people really use it in that regard, then our utility companies, water department, electricity department, they can see some increase in their revenue collection, because whereas alternative people may not have been paying too much attention to or giving any urgency or priority to paying those utility bills, because the stipulation here is that it has to be used for utility bills and nothing else. It means that person would use it in that regard, and so the revenue collection at those departments should increase and the rate of arrears should decrease at those departments. At the same time, it's spent on food, so we expect that there will be some uptick in the supermarket. Of course, those would have a spiral effect back to government, because of course supermarkets, they're going to pay tax, they're going to pay VAT on importation of some items, even the basic food itself is exempt from VAT. So by and large, what it does, it puts some disposable spending income in the hand of those persons who really needed to have something to spend, and I believe that those persons will spend it, because there are so many limitations as to what you can do with it. You really can't save it, but just spend on the basic item, which is food and electricity. So it will have a positive effect, even though it's small, but it's spread over a large number of persons. So even though it is small per person, when you look at the multiplier effect across the 5,000 plus persons, you can have a cumulative effect in the economy.
Some people are complaining about it because they wanted to have the money to do what they want. I thought it was a beautiful move by the federal government to have it done like that, because, if you give that directly to persons, they will spend it otherwise. But let me ask you this. How do you see that, the effect of that in comparison to a double salary in terms of the overall economy? Which one is more effective?
Well, the double salary will be larger and touch a larger number of persons.
But it's a one-time payment.
It's a one-time payment. But in terms of the effect is going to be the same, because normally when you pay a double salary, those persons at the lower end, they really don't save it. They go and buy the thing that ordinarily they would not have been able to buy.
True.
And so they would have the same effect. Here you give them extra $250. Some of the things that they couldn't afford from their income, they're now going to go and purchase it, even though there's some limit. Or you can look at it differently. If the $250 is to pay utility and food, it means that the money that you had for that can go towards something else and purchase that item which they would have liked to purchase, but the income really didn't go to that level. So I think that was part of the thinking at the federal level, that utility and food are the two main challenging things. So if we give you the subsidy and that, then of course you'll have the larger part of your income, your salary, to cover the things that you really would like to cover and improve your standard of living.
I agree with you, and like I say, I think it was a very good strategic move on behalf of the federal government. Now, we have heard of the CBI not doing as well as in years gone by. Are you seeing any fallout from that as it relates to the Nevis end of the CBI business?
Well, CBI, and we all see it in the news, is not at the level that it was 10, 15 years ago. I mean, these programs, they have a high, and after a while they start to take the downward part of the curve. Now, in terms of the Nevis end, we continue to receive a fixed amount from the federal government. So we are not seeing the effect of a reduction at our end, not at this point, because the amount that was promised by the federal government as budget support on a monthly basis continues to be the same from 2020, 2021 up until now. So even though there might be a fall off, generally overall, that effect is not coming to us at this point, because the amount allocated to us is a fixed amount.
The question I was really asking there is that some people in Nevis indulge in the CBI thing.
Okay, from that point of view, yes, because of course a large portion of the CBI is generated from real estate, and therefore if the buyer's market, that is those persons looking to get a passport via the purchase of property, if that market is shrinking, then obviously that our real estate person will be seeing a reduction in business activity, reduction in the ability to sell properties and so on. And so yes, it would have that effect, because if that sector, which is a thriving sector in Nevis, the real estate development, if that starts to take a downturn, then you're going to have a cumulative effect right throughout the economy, because tourism and real estate are one of the main pillars that carries the economy. Construction, tourism, real estate, that of that nature. And so yes, it will have that effect once we start to have a fall off, as we are seeing in sales.
Okay, great. I thought so, actually. Now, I want to focus your attention now on the 2025 budget proposals for Nevis. During the COVID pandemic period of 2020 to 2022, the CCM-led Nevis Island Administration suffered some serious financial losses, while at the same time extending the hand of support to our farmers, public and private business, as well as citizens and residents of Nevis. The 2025 budget, as I mentioned earlier, looks to me like a budget to recover some of those losses, and rightly so. A number of new initiatives are being introduced to get the Nevis economy back on the path that it was on prior to the coming of the COVID pandemic. Before I go any further, I must commend the CCM-led Nevis Island Administration for how they are approaching these initiatives, because they are clearly doing it with the small man in mind and small business operators as well. For instance, the land and house tax that will be introduced shortly is for persons owning property valued at $2 million or more, which ensures that the citizens and residents of Nevis will not be affected by this new tax. Speak to us a little about this new initiative and how you see it impacting the island revenue collection.
The land and house tax, or what we commonly call property tax, is an important revenue source. We continue to be alarmed that despite the rate of construction, new homes being constructed day after day after day, we are not seeing a large increase in the collection of property tax. The initiative that we put in place obviously was to ensure that we protect those persons at the lower end, because it started at $2 million and above, and that those persons at the higher end who has expensive property in the expensive areas of Nevis would pay a larger share of tax than those who are in the lower section. But I want to use this medium as well to say to our people that owning a property in Nevis is a privilege, and yes, it's a right. But at the same time, you have an obligation to pay your property tax. Our property tax are not very large. Our figures are marginally small. The average property tax at the lower end is probably $500-700 per year. But we continue to have a large number of persons who continue not to pay the property tax, and our arrears for property tax continue to increase year after year after year. We also know that those persons who have built property and went overseas, they are not making the proper arrangement to have their taxes paid on time. So I want to use this medium to appeal to those persons to see property tax as an important obligation to the development of the country, and therefore make their necessary arrangement, whether you're living here or living overseas, to pay. Because what we did, we tried not to adjust the property tax at the lower end, because we did not want to have any undue negative effect on the large portion of the population. And so this initiative more would affect those at the higher end of the income ladder.
I observe that, yes. Now, the restaurants tax also will be increased from 2 to 3% in a couple of months as well, which will most definitely add to the Nevis Island Administration revenue collection. With land-based tourism rapidly increasing here on the island of Nevis, this added 1% restaurant tax could have serious impact on our revenue collection. What are your expectations when this tax is implemented?
Okay, this tax we expect to implement mid-year, and this came about after a discussion with the hoteliers, because following COVID, they are now seeing an uptick. And I must remind the public that this money which is collected as a tourism levy is what is used primarily to market Nevis as a tourism destination. So these monies are allocated to the Nevis Tourism Authority to fund their marketing budget. So all the overseas trips, all the road shows, all the promotion of Nevis out there to try to lure visitors into Nevis, it is this 2%, which would go to 3%, which is used primarily for that purpose. And so by increasing it, it would provide in NIA and by extension the Nevis Tourism Authority the resources necessary to continue to market Nevis and to put us in a competitive position in comparison to our other destinations who are also out there looking for the tourist dollar just like us. So it would definitely be a benefit to us, and it is a charge which is not necessarily falling on the locals. It's more falling on visitors coming into Nevis, and therefore we don't think it will have too much of a negative effect on our local person. But of course, on the positive side, it will give us the resources necessary to continue to market Nevis as a tourist destination.
True. Now, in addition to these new initiatives, the budget speaks to a greater tax collection effort by the Inland Revenue Department, especially from those businesses that have been in arrears for God knows how long. You and I know that the collection from them has been problematic in the past. How do you propose to enforce those collection initiatives this time around?
Following COVID, we kind of took a relaxed attitude toward this, because we realized a lot of businesses were turning around, and therefore we didn't want to have too much of an undue effect. So government itself bear most of that cost. We now recognize that the economy has taken a turnaround, and that these businesses now are in a better position to pay. We offer them incentive by reducing the interest and so on if they were to make the payment in full. We also offer them the option to pay in installment. And so we have been doing a number of things, but we still have some persons still not complying and paying the fair share of taxes. Now, one of the creative things we have done from the Inland Revenue Department and Treasury, and it's one of fairness. If you're working for government, that is your supplier who are supplying items to government, and you owe taxes, you can't expect the government to pay you in full and you're not paying government. So we have used that medium to basically set a person Government owe you, but you owe government. So on each payment that you have coming from us, make an arrangement for a portion of it to go towards your taxes. We have had good compliance rate in that regard. Persons have been paying. Another thing we have done as well at the Inland Revenue Department, we have said to persons, a tax is a tax. So when you come to do your driver's license and you owe property tax, we are saying to you, your account is in arrears, you need to make some arrangement to settle. So we kind of use that to say to persons, when you're coming to settle one form of tax, make sure that all the others are in order, because you can't come expect to just deal with your driver's license and leave your property tax unpaid. The whole thing is linked. Your tax account consists of all the taxes that you owe at Inland Revenue Department, and therefore we've been using that medium to set a person. When you come to do your driver's license, you have to come and settle your taxes as well at the same time. Businesses, when you come to do your business license and you have your taxes outstanding, you need to come and settle that as well. So we have kind of tied it in a package rather than treat it in isolation, where we are saying, well, you come on into the business license and we are leaving you at your own ledger and pleasure to come and deal with the others. We are saying, no, everything is in one package. And so our cashiers at Inland Revenue, when you come to the one thing, they bring it to your attention. Here it is, your account is in arrears. What the system actually does, when they put your name in, you get flagged. And the pop-up would show you have 4 or 5 different type of taxes outstanding, and straight away the cashier can bring it to your attention. So we want to say to persons, you have an obligation to pay your taxes. And we are saying to you, we understand the difficulty of making a lump sum cash payment. We have always put in place the arrangement to pay in installment. However, once we develop an installment arrangement, we expect you to keep the installment arrangement. There are some persons who pay the first installment and then you don't hear from them again until the next year when they want a license. Now, when you do that, you put yourself in a difficult position, because whereas we accommodate it in the first year, the second year we're going to say, no, you have to pay up everything. And then we have no guarantee this time around that even if we continue the installment arrangement, you're going to make good on it, because you defaulted the first time around. So it damages what we call your creditability with the department. And that's why it's important that when you make the obligation, make one that you know is manageable and try to stick to it. Of course, sometimes you have these things and something may pop up and you miss 1 or 2. Communication is important. Reach out and indicate, okay, I missed this month, but I'll pick up the following month. Don't be a case where you miss January, but you pay January to get the license, you miss February, March, and you did nothing, you don't reach out, and then you come back November because you want the license in January again, the following year to say, well, I'm going to start paying again. The record will show that you have missed 9 out of 12, even though you have paid 3. And so it damages your record, basically, and your ability for us to enter that type of arrangement again.
Now, I was listening to you asking them to, when they come for the money from government, to budget for what they owe government as well.
Yes.
Now, what about if you, well, let me ask you this question. Can the government deduct that?
Well,
pay them the balance? Because that to me seems a safer way to get your money.
What we have tried to do, we have tried to say to them, look, let's be fair. When you come, the Inland Revenue, and the interesting thing about it, the Inland Revenue and Treasury is in the same building, same floor, facing each other. So when you come, you pay at Inland Revenue and then you come and you collect a check from us, that is fine. Or if you want to give us the okay to make the deduction, and a number of persons have consented to that, to say, well, take the deduction and just pay me the difference, and just adjust that I need the information for the record. So we have had persons who have complied in that case, because they understand that if they don't make the voluntary arrangement, we have the option to do it compulsory. And so what we normally do for Inland Revenue, persons who we know have been difficult to pay, once we establish that there is money for them to be collected, Inland Revenue will write to them to say, make an arrangement to pay, failing which we'll ask the Treasury to make the deduction. So we kind of put it back into their hand to first make the arrangement on their own. And if they don't, then we basically will make the deduction and advise them that we have taken X amount to cover your taxes. And once we have done that, we always provide them with the receipt and the balance on their account, so they too can do the checks to see that their account has been paid and they have the record, and they know that the account has been paid. So we always try to provide information to them, having taken the action of making the deduction.
Are there any additional consequences for those who may still refuse to comply with the new enforcement measures?
Well, the last resort is really court action. And we try not to go to that because we believe we are reasonable people and persons can understand and reason. And we understand person's situation. And that's why we gave the option of come have the discussion, make some installment arrangement and try to stick to it. We would not ask you to make an installment payment more than you can carry. You know your situation, make it, and once you have made it, we expect you to stick to it. So we expect you to have taken some time, examine your own situation and determine what is the best you can offer, which is reasonable, and then we expect you to stick with it.
Okay, great. Now, the budget also speaks to new duty-free measures to be put in place. Could you enlighten us further on some of those measures?
Okay, one of the measures that we have, we noticed, for example, that construction, and this happened after COVID, when tourism was down, we realized construction was never lost its way. As a matter of fact, the construction sector was the first one to open when we came back out after COVID. And since that, we realized we continue to build. If you go around Nevis now, when we check the last year, we had at least 170 plus active construction sites.
Wow.
And we feel that as a result of that, we needed to continue to do things to stimulate that sector. What we find interesting, as we had the program which we call the first-time homeowners, that is somebody building the home for the first time. I mean, everybody would want to build a first home. But persons from time to time would be adding, renovating, modernizing, and so on. And so we've implemented for this year a second policy which we call home renovation modernization. That if you're doing any kind of thing in your home, you're painting, changing windows, changing door, adding on a room, and so on, we have developed a concession package whereby there is an exemption from the customs duty and the customs service charge, and you pay only the VAT, but it's on the building materials only and not furniture and equipment. And the reason why we did it, because we felt that you may have somebody who built their first home when they had a family of 2 children, and the numbers have increased to 3 and 4. They need to add 2 more rooms. There was no more program because you could not go back into a first-time homeowners program because you already have a first home. And so we felt that if you're going to provide some relief for these persons who want to improve themselves, want to improve their surrounding, we had to put something in place. So we put this arrangement in place. And actually, this follows on from some we had before, where we had what we had called a COVID relief. That is right after COVID, we had put a similar arrangement in place. And then last year, we had the cultural armor enhancement. That is anybody who was doing anything for cultural armor because a person was coming home. So these are the little things that we put in place. And we suddenly realized that when we have our discussion with the suppliers of building material, these little initiatives actually turning over stock at these entities. Because people are doing, even the small construction, it might be something that worth 50,000. But when you look at the number of persons doing so, it is having that cumulative effect and driving economic activity. As a matter of fact, at this point, I don't think you can easily find a construction worker available. The construction sector now seems to be fully engaged 7 days a week. To try to get a contractor to do something for you, you have to fit into the schedule somewhere along. It tells us that this sector is growing, is carrying the weight of the economy, and therefore we thought we needed to subsidize it and to incentivize it by this program, which, having launched it in December in the budget, we already start to see an uptick in activity for persons wanting to do these things, which is good because it means that that level of economic activity is turning over as we go along. So it is generating the benefits that we were looking for.
I am happy that you're the one saying it because you're the man with the purse. My question is, what do you say to those persons who keep saying nothing is happening in Nevis?
Well, nothing is happening. It depends on what you are looking for to happen. I mean, some they will tell you, okay, there's no major project, but you could have one major project and you could have 20 smaller projects, and the economic activity for the 20 smaller is even more than the one major project.
Sure.
And so it depends on what you are looking for and how you are measuring what is happening, whether you're looking at a single major item or a number of small cumulative things which are having the same economic benefit. At the end of the day, whatever it goes, it comes down to a couple of things. One, increasing spending money for person disposable income, and 2, increasing employment. So whether there's a number of small projects generating it or one major, our goal is to ensure that our level of employment is increasing and the level of spending for person within the economy is also increasing.
Great, great. Now, the CCM-led Nevis Island Administration over the years has introduced quite a few initiatives, some of which has turned out to be very visionary, like the Uwali Pier, the Mundo Track, the Indian Castle Food Farm, the Malcolm Gishard Recreational Park, just to name a few. At his press conference on Tuesday, January 28, the Premier announced another new initiative called the Diaspora Investment Initiative. Shed some further light, if you can, on that initiative for us.
Yeah, the Diaspora Investment Initiative was something that we conceptualized in last year's budget. Previously, we had something which we call Returning National. That is our people who are living overseas for more than 10 years are wishing to return home. We always incentivize them to return home because we always feel that the more persons on the island, the greater the population, the greater the spending power, the greater the ability for us to do a number of things. But we suddenly realized that a number of our persons, they are doing well overseas. They are owning businesses overseas. They are in top positions in major organizations overseas. And we believe that those persons could have had a similar effect here on the island of Nevis. So by putting in these programs in place now, the diaspora investment, we are saying to our people, not just see Nevis as coming back home, but see it as a place open for business, and the same business venture you have overseas can be operated here from home. Whether you're going to set it up here or you're going to operate it here as a branch of what is overseas, we are saying to you, bring some of that entrepreneurial spirit back to Nevis. Everybody would not do that. Some are just coming back because, okay, they've been out there working and they're tired and they need to come back home. But at the same time, you're coming back with resources, spend some of that in the economy through the various means. So we believe this is one initiative that could help us generate some employment. And we have listed a number of sectors that we are focusing on for that diaspora investment initiative. And so we are hoping that by doing that, we can get the kind of traction that we are looking for. We are looking for investment in health. We are looking for investment in manufacturing, in professional services. We are looking for investment in agriculture. And so we have a whole list of areas that we are looking for persons to invest in. And once you come back into that, we have a whole set of incentive and concession that we are prepared to grant to you to get you up and running as a business within the economy. Because we believe that each business that comes employ one, that one additional employment, employ 2 and 3, that even more. And so all of these are geared toward generating employment within the economy. So we are using this appeal then to appeal to our people in the diaspora to look at this initiative and to grab hold of it. We need your help to develop Nevis. You are Nevisian, you are coming back home, bring some of those business ideas and let's try to turn them into productive ideas here on the island. And let's get our economy rolling and rolling and rolling.
You think you could outline for them some of the duty-free concessions that is part and parcel of that?
Yeah, part of that, if you are building, we have an exemption from custom duty on building material. We also provide an exemption on furniture equipment for your business. We also provide exemption on a vehicle for the business. And so we have all of that. And if you are investing much larger than that, I think it's 100,000 US, we also make some provision for things like a reduction in the amount for business license. If you are in a specialized area that you need to bring person from outside that's not available here, we have some adjustment on the work permit fee for the first 2 years and so on. So all of these things which normally would have added to your business costs at the outset to help you get started, we have made some reduction in those, and the information is available at the Ministry of Finance. And so very soon in the upcoming month we're going to be rolling out this program fully. The Premier did make some mention of it, but we're going to be rolling it out fully to our people in diaspora. We're actually going to we're proposing to set up a diaspora unit within the Ministry of Finance where a person can have direct contact to get the information, and that unit will help and work as a one-stop to help you through all the procedures that you need to complete, so as to make your transition back to Nevis as smooth as possible.
Sounds good. Now, while you're at it, could you give them the numbers to call or where they could get the information for those who may be interested in what you just mentioned?
Well, the contact would be Ministry of Finance. Of course, you have to go through administration switchboard, and then we also will have our direct line, which we're going to activate shortly and have all that available on the government website. We actually intend to post on the government website and also on our investment promotion agency website the full details of this program. So persons who have an interest can make contact, can send the necessary request via email, so we can provide information so we can get it going. So we'll be rolling it out shortly to all the media and government website, NEPA website. All of these would be there to outline the areas that are our focus.
Okay, great. Now, all these new budget initiatives, how do you see them impacting the local economy in the not too distant future?
We expect a positive impact, and the main idea behind them is jobs, as the Premier would always say. Our idea is to see how much employment we can create year after year. We notice that our numbers for employment continue to increase, but there's still room for more increases. And at the same time, in St. Nevis, or more so in Nevis, you normally find businesses are of a particular type, retail, buy and sell. And we believe that by having these new initiatives, we encourage people outside to diversify, go more into the services, to become more creative. Because actually, if you really start to be creative, there are so many business opportunities you can open by just being creative and moving away from the old traditional of buying and selling. And so we are hoping that these initiatives would push persons to think outside the box and create ideas as to how they can create a business, a viable business entity. And of course, to do that, you need some incentive. And so we are hoping that these would push you in a direction and have the necessary positive impact on the economy.
Okay, great. Now, I want to shift your attention now to the gratuity and pension scheme that the Nevis Island Administration has just introduced, just a few months back. Because I think it's a big deal. Some people are playing it down like it's something small. This is a huge deal. And I keep remembering my friend there, the guy Williams, I forget his name. Samuel Williams. He been calling for that for years. I always remember he calling for that. And I think it's a tremendous move by the CCM-led administration to introduce such an important initiative for the people of Nevis, especially those who otherwise would not have been getting anything. So shed some light on that. Tell me how it is going. And
it's an important initiative because retirement is a time when you really don't have a steady flow of income from work, and therefore any little income flow at that time in your career is important. Previously, we had a situation where what we call our non-established workers, they would work, some of them had to work up until 60, 70 years because they had no income at the time of retirement. And so we felt that this couldn't be fair to them, where these people who have been laboring, some of them from the time they were 18, 19, when you get to the age of 62, this is the time for you to pull back, slow down, enjoy the rest, the life you have. I mean, we get 2 scores and 10. At 62, you need now to be enjoying the rest that remain. And we find that our people had to be working all the way up to that time just to sustain themselves and basically working from paycheck to paycheck. So what government did, we look at it and we decide, look, we have to treat these workers as if they are important, because we know they are important. Because when you look at the established worker, for example, those employed to the Public Service Commission, they have a benefit at retirement. And so why treat the two set of workers differently when they're all contributing equally to the performance of government? So we introduced this scheme modeled along the same lines as you have for the established worker. And what it does, it makes provision that a non-established worker, when you get to 62, you can retire. And I want to use this medium as well to say to our non-established workers, the policy we have established is that once you get to 62, you need to transition into retirement. We continue to be alarmed that persons are getting up to the age of 62 and seem to want somebody to remind them that they are 62 and that they should retire. We expect that once you get to that stage, provision is made that 3 months before your 62nd birthday, you fill the necessary form so that your benefits can be ready for you soon after your 62nd birthday. Actually, when we check, we have some person way past the 62nd and not made the provision to retire. And so it should not be left to government to have to take to you to remind you are 62 and that you need to make the provision. You know you are 62. Once the scheme is now in place, it's a voluntary scheme. You make the provision at 62 to retire. We have had a number of persons who have benefited from it. I believe the last counted number was who has exited since the scheme was close on 70 persons. And all of those persons would have gotten their some portion of the gratuity benefit, because of course the payment of the gratuity would depend on our cash flow. But for sure, once you have completed, your monthly pension is being paid to you. So whereas there might be some delay in the gratuity, some person may have gotten half, 3/4, and that sort of thing, the monthly pension, once the process is completed, flows to you, so that monthly income is flowing to you, even though we may have a backlog in the payment of the gratuity. So the payment at that point is really a lump sum payment immediately, and then there's a monthly flow coming to you for your remaining life. And so it's a very important scheme. It provides that kind of benefit for you at the age of 62, so you're going to have a sure source of income as you head and transition into retirement to enjoy the final days of your life.
Okay. Could you remind those persons who are listening who get gratuity and who gets pension?
Well, the scheme provides that you must have in at least 10 years of service by the time you reach the age of 62. We like every scheme, sometimes when you implement a scheme, you may meet some people who get caught in between. Because when we introduced this scheme in 2023, 2022, of course you're going to have some people who are 62, but did not have 10 years. No fault of theirs, because when they came in, there was no scheme. Those persons, we make provision for them to get what we call a compassionate allowance, a compassionate grant. But those persons who have the 10 years and have reached the 62nd birthday, they receive the monthly pension payment and the gratuity. The scheme also provides that person can leave after 15 years of service, but you're only going to get the gratuity payment. Your pension then would fall to you on your 62nd birthday. And this was modeled off of the one for the established worker, where a worker can resign after 15 years, but they don't get the gratuity until they're the pension until they are 62. So they get the gratuity right at the point of retirement. So there was really no differentiation between the scheme for an established worker and a non-established worker, because we wanted to have some parity in the way that workers are treated.
Okay.
So again, I want to use the opportunity to remind persons, as you head to your 62nd birthday, make the necessary arrangement. The application forms are available at your various ministry and at the Premier's ministry. Complete the forms 3 months before your due date. Have the information sent in along with your social security record, because that is the basis on which we are trying to determine whether you have the 10 years. The social security record is the sure way of establishing that, and that once you have submitted those, then communication will flow to you after you have submitted that to say they have been accepted. We will respond to you when the calculation is done, outlining what is the amount to be paid to you and how it will be paid and so on. So all of that will flow, and it's a voluntary process. Again, we want to say to persons, as you approach 62, don't wait for somebody to write you or to remind you the next morning you're 62 and you shouldn't be here. Make the necessary arrangement to transition into retirement as you start to approach 62.
Okay, I think they hear you. Now, at the start of that program, like everything else, there were little teething problems here and there. Is it safe to say now that things are smoothed out and you know?
Yes, it has smoothed out, because normally what you had at the start of the program, because everybody was waiting for this program, you had what we call a mass exodus. And so you have, when you start this program, then everybody was already 62 and was just waiting to see what the program going to look like, took the opportunity. And so in the early part, we had some bottlenecks in terms of the number of applicants being processed. But I think all that has been straightened out now, and now it's just a natural process of those who are falling 62 within the given year. And so the number of new persons coming through has drastically reduced. And so we are able to turn over the calculation much faster and get those out.
Okay, great. Folks, you're listening to Government at Work. My guest this evening is Mr. Colin, Dore, Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Finance. We shall take a short break, and when we return, we shall continue with our discussions here on Government at Work.
So right, St. Thomas is right, St. James is put together and build your land. Right, St. George's and St. Paul's together with St. John's. This land is enough for all to share. No reason to leave and go nowhere. Foreigners can come here from America and England. Then there's
Welcome back. Mr. Dore, we spoke earlier of some of the initiatives that the CCM government has put in place that has been successful and very visionary. What has been the benefit of those initiatives, especially the Uwalipier and the Malcolm Gishard Recreational Park?
Those two initiatives were really meant to support the tourism sector, and the water taxi pay has really been a big winner. We'll all confess, when we look at where we land in Nevis versus where we land in Sinkit, you see a marked difference. And we continue to get good praises from the persons coming over from Sinkit. What the taxi pay has actually done, it has been really a boost to tourism and local transport. As a matter of fact, traveling from the water taxi pier now seems to be the main gateway to Sinkits. Charlestown used to be, but I think there are a lot of activity are shifting over to that side. And the reason being the convenience, the time, and the fact that you can flip over and flip back. People want to know that they can move and move quickly and not delay, because time is of essence. If you have something to deal with in Sinkits, the days when you had to go down at 8, come back at 12, or 8 and then come back at 4, and then you change from 8 to 12, you're tying up a whole heap of time when you could be doing other things. So by having the water taxi, you could actually move within an hour and do what you have to do and get back. And so it has really changed the landscape, not only in terms of tourism, but in terms of local person having to move swiftly between the two islands. And so it has been one of the major investments in Nevis that has taken root and has have a large economic activity. And I'm sure everybody, you always drive across and you realize the parking lot is full, the roadway is full. I mean, those persons are not out there alignment. They are flipping between Sinkit and Nevis.
Sure.
It has helped a number of our local businesses, contractors and so on. There are a number of Nevision contractors who are working on the peninsula side of it. There are a number of our workers who flip over to Park Hyatt and get back on a daily basis. As a matter of fact, you can move from Nevis, Gingerland, work at Park Hyatt and get to work on time faster than somebody in Sinkit who's coming from Sandy Point.
True.
And so it has basically helped us to benefit from what we usually call the Nevis side of Sinkit, which is the areas on the peninsula, because you can access them easier from Nevis than you can from Sinkit. So it has really been a big winner. It was a major investment which is bearing fruit, and all we ask person to do is to take care of the facility we have. Too often we have the tendency to vandalize and do all kind of thing. Take care of the property, because it's a significant investment which is meant to have a significant economic activity for the island of Nevis. And I believe it can only go from strength to strength. As we see more hotel property open on the peninsula, we're going to see a greater impact, because it is much easier to go from those hotels to a Four Seasons than to go from there to other hotels in Sinkit. And of course, the hotels in Nevis, they are 5-star brand which fits those on the peninsula, so the movement between those two would always be of a higher value than moving between other hotels in Sinkits.
And it's easier to get workers from Nevis as well.
It's easier to get workers from Nevis, yeah. In terms of the Malcolm Gishard Park, that as well has transformed, and not just the Malcolm Gishard Park plus the improvement down at Pipinis. And we want to say thanks to the government and the people of Taiwan for their initiative. They came forward and they looked at the project and they felt that there's something they could have done for us. It was all funded by them. And so the final product, we are quite pleased with it. It has really been a boost for our tourism sector. It has enhanced the area, and the facility at Malcolm Gishard is always available for persons from various events. As a matter of fact, for 2024, there were a whole heap of events. Even persons from Sinkits came over to utilize that facility for their private and public events. So it was a real game changer as well. And again, I ask persons to just take care of the property, appreciate it for what it is, and let's ensure that we cherish it, and we can continue to reap the benefit coming from that property.
True. Now, we are currently, Mr. Dore, losing quite a bit of corporate taxes from business operating here on Nevis, but paying their taxes in Sinkits. It is something that several of our premiers has been trying to negotiate with our counterparts in Sinkits, but to no avail at this point. Is there anything that can be done from the Nevis end to stop the bleeding, or it's purely a federal matter?
Sinkit and Nevis is a unique setup when it comes to business, because our constitution provides that you can operate a business, register a business in one place and operate a branch in the other place. And the Business Act provides that your tax is really due and payable where your head office is, because the branch really don't pay taxes. So if you have a business which is head office in St. Kitts and have a branch in Nevis, the law provides that they can pay their taxes over in St. Kitts. Vice versa, if you have it in Nevis and a branch in St. Kitts, you can pay in Nevis as well. But we are seeing more of the reverse where these are the St. Kitts businesses who have a branch over in Nevis. What it means, therefore, is that the economic activity generated in Nevis and the tax generated from the economic activity in Nevis is actually flowing into St. Kitts. It's something which we've been discussing to see how we can make some changes. Previous governments have gone to the rounds and they have discussed it, make some changes in a little bits and pieces of way, but it takes an overall overhaul at the federal level to change the tax legislation to indicate that you pay your taxes at the point where your business activity is being generated. And I think it's only fair, because if in Nevis we are doing a lot of things to generate a business activity, we should really be seeing the effect of that, because the way you measure the success of an economy is by the revenue generated within the economy. And if you are trying to improve the Nevis economy, generating revenue, but it's not recorded over here, we have no idea as to how well we are doing. And this is one of the job acts that we have, and which we've been talking about, discussing with the federal level. But it needs some changes in the federal legislation as it relates to corporate income tax. A similar thing is happening with VAT as well, because the VAT legislation, when it was implemented, make provision for something we call single filing, where an entity can pool and file their VAT in one place. For example, if you're operating in St. Kitts and you're also operating in Nevis, you can choose to pool and file your VAT over in St. Kitts, or vice versa, pool and file your VAT in Nevis. We have been saying and asking at the federal level to have that change and let businesses again pay at the point where they are generating the revenue, which I think would be good for both of us, because it gives you an idea of what is happening within your economy. You're getting a false hope, for example, if Nevis revenue is being paid over in St. Kitts. Because when you look at it, you are saying the St. Kitts economy is generating X amount, but it's not. And so I think it's only fair that we do that, and so each of us can have an appreciation of what is really happening in your economy, and you can measure on a year-by-year basis whether the economy is growing because it's generating more tax revenue, or it is shrinking because the tax revenue is falling. And so we are hoping that over the next year or so we can have some firm decision being made on those to make the adjustment to allow businesses to file and pay both the VAT and corporate tax where the activities are generated, so we could have a better feel as to how well we are doing in terms of growing our economy.
How hopeful are you that something like that would happen? Because, like I said, several premiers has been fighting that battle to no avail at this point.
It's been going on for a while. We still remain hopeful that at the end of the day we can see it, because it is the benefit for both St. Kitts and Nevis, because it gives you a better idea of what is actually happening at your end. Because then you are looking to see what is it your economy itself is generating by counting what revenue generated from economic activity on your island.
And additionally, couldn't we use the argument that there's wear and tear in the roads as a result of your business going back on the road?
Well, we have said that, and we try to impress on the federal government that we have to maintain these structures here in Nevis, and therefore those same businesses who are generating activity, causing the wear and tear. I mean, we have to dispose of their garbage at the solid waste. We have to do all of those things, but the revenue generated is not staying by us to help us to continue to make those provisions.
Exactly.
The wear and tear on the road, as you say, the disposal of the garbage and so on, and all of those things we have to provide for. The workers over here, we have to provide for them. Our health facility, our education facility need that, but the revenue to support that is flowing in the river. So it is an important argument which we're making, and we are hopeful that at some point we will get some traction on it.
You mentioned it may take legislation to get it ironed out, but couldn't it be a gentleman agreement between both leaders?
It can be, but you know, for something, in order for you to have it permanent, because when you have those type of things, if there's a fallout between the two countries or a change of government, then there's no legal obligation to do any of those. And what was a gentleman's agreement, then somebody look in the book and say, but this is not legal, and we fall away from it. So it's always best to do these things legally, so that whatever hurdle you meet in the future, it's protected by law.
Sure.
and therefore there can't be any case where anybody can use the discretion and say, well, let's change it, because it was just a gentleman's agreement.
Okay, great. Now, if Nevis were to collect all of its corporate taxes that are currently going to sink it, our revenue collection, I am told, would improve tremendously. Give us an idea of the kind of revenue we are talking about.
We haven't put a dollar value because we're still trying to assess it, but we believe that if we were to do this, we can see at least, especially on the VAT side, a 1.5 to 2 million increase in revenue per month coming from these type of activities. Because let's be frank, the business entities right now in Nevis that pay their VAT over and sink it are the National Bank, the Development Bank, courts. And so the Digicel, Cable and Wireless. And these are large entities that generate economic activity.
Of course.
I mean, when we look at what happened at the banks, for example, all of those overseas transactions, wire transfer transaction, any service that the bank does for you these days have a charge, and on that charge is VAT. Our telephone companies, I mean, we know over in Nevis, Nevision have the internet that we have have a much higher value than those over in Singapore. So we are paying some serious money over here for internet and so on. And when you calculate the VAT on those, you'll realize that it's a large amount. So that's why we put the figure at somewhere between 1 to 1.5 million, or even closer to 2 million in terms of what we would have been able to collect on a monthly basis if we had a situation where those taxes were being paid over here because they are generated from business activity over here in Nevis.
Okay.
And this is just rough calculation. We have not gone into the science yet of getting the business data from the business entities to tell us. This is why we are looking at the scope of it. And when we measure, for example, those entities who are paying over here, and we look at the comparative of those who are not paying, we recognize that that figure could fall somewhere within that range.
Okay. Let's hope we get that due at some point, because I know it has been a struggle over the years, and we keep fighting to have that implemented, but let's keep our fingers crossed. Now the year has just started, but how do you see the 2025 budget proposals impacting our economy in 2025, especially in light of the fact that there will be a 4% drop, like I said earlier, in the VAT collection?
Well, when we make our budget every year, and I think the Premier alluded to this at some forum earlier in the week, we make our budget merely our best projection. We have no control over what can occur, and therefore even with the best of prediction we can go wrong in terms of our revenue collection. So every bit of revenue that we collect is important. And I must remind the public as well, when it comes to budget, even though we go to the House and we say we make a budget for $170 $180 million, this is not money sitting in the bank. And too often people start to rate budget versus cash.
Yeah.
There's quite a difference between budget and cash. Budget is what you project to collect, and this will be done by your daily collection. You don't have, when you make a budget for 190 million, in order you have the 190 million sitting in the bank. You are hoping that on a daily basis you'll collect via revenue collecting department, again because you expect that those persons who have an obligation to pay their taxes will pay their taxes. And it is this money therefore that you have to use to cover the expenses. Now when we start the budget, like every budget cycle, and it is not unusual or alarming, we normally start the year with a situation where our expenditure is more than income. Because we are projecting that if you were to achieve this level of expenditure, we have to now go and identify some alternative income sources, whether we're going to go to the bank and look for overdraft, we're going to get grant funds and so on. And so this year, for example, we wanted to take a much tighter approach than we did before. What we're basically saying is that when we started the budget this year, we had at least 20% of our expenditure for which we are yet to identify the revenue source to fund it. Okay. Because when we make the budget in December, we are saying in the new year we are hoping to go out and get these funding. We have always taken the view that if you don't get them, we're not going to go and be reckless in our spending. We will basically cut back on some of our expenditure. So earlier this year, as a matter of fact, the first working week, we had a meeting with the ministers and permanent secretaries because we want to appraise them that we have to take a different approach this year. It could no longer be a case where we make a budget and we just go off and spend. This year we are taking a tighter rein. If the revenue is available, we'll make the expenditure. If the revenue is not available, we have to curtail the expenditure. So at that meeting, we did indicate to them that at this point, we had at least 20% of our budget that we have yet to identify the expenditure. And that 20 came about because of the budget and also this with 4% reduction. So straight away we are starting here, we are saying to them, 20% of the allocated budget expenditure will be on hold. Now, it doesn't mean that it's on hold indefinitely. As we seek to identify the revenue source, we'll make the releases of funds to the department. So I don't want anybody to get the impression that we are saying we make a budget and then straight away we say we cut in the budget. We are not saying that. We are saying at this point we could not identify the funding, and therefore we have basically put that portion on hold. And as the funding become available, we release more and more of that.
Right.
So if you can raise revenue for 10% of that in the first 2 months, then we are released at 10 and we are only holding back 10. When we get to the point of raising the revenue for all 20, then we allow the full budget to be executed. It's a natural process occurring in other countries, and by doing that, it allows you to put some control on, as opposed to starting to spend money where you don't have the revenue to support it. We have to be conservative and we have to be responsible as a government, and we really can't just go and incur expenditure hoping that we'll find the resources to pay it. We have to first find the resources and then incur the expenditure.
Okay, understood. Now, which areas of development are you looking to in 2025 for the further development of our economy? Which particular areas are you looking?
The real estate has been the one that has been carried, and that's why I mentioned earlier we did all of these concession and construction, because we feel that if it's one sector that will always carry its weight is the construction. People always build, people always renovate, people always better than sell, people always modernize. And so we are looking to the construction sector to carry some serious weight in this year. The tourism sector as well is emerging. The hotels are reporting to us they're getting better and better bookings each year, so we expect tourism to carry a good solid weight. As a matter of fact, tourism in 2024 did very well, and we continue to see improvement even after we came out of COVID. We continue to see increases in occupancy rate. We continue to see increases in spending power even within the tourism sector. And so we expect that sector to continue to move from year to year. Financial services is the one that we are also looking towards to give a boost as we go forward. As a matter of fact, last year we celebrated 40 years as a financial services jurisdiction. Now, that is really a commendable feat. It was 40 years ago that we jumped into this thing, not knowing where we're going to head, and now we are one of the major competitive jurisdiction within the region. Having completed 40 years, our look now is what do we do for the next 40? Because we have had some tremendous success over the past 40 years. Yes, we have had the challenges. We had some blacklisting, we have the grey listing, and we had all kind of things thrown at us. We had our island being labeled as tax haven and all that, but we have overcome all of those challenges. And of course, our ability to do so is because we have always been adaptive and creative. We recognize that this sector is not really determined by us, it's determined by the bigger players. And if you're going to stay in it, we have to keep moving. We have to respond to what they are asking for, and rather than wait for them to tell us, as we see the trend coming in other places, we have to make different adjustments to our legislation. What we have also tried to do as well is to grow the sector, and the wish of the Premier is that we want to grow the sector by 50% year after year. And to do so, we are growing it not just by having new incorporation of business entities, but we're trying to attract entities from our competitor jurisdiction, Panama, Anguilla, BVI, to come and set up in Nevis. And so we continue to have that discussion with them and try to continue to incentivize them and to make Nevis as a place where we are open for business and things can be done quick, speedily, and in order. I think for these persons, they're looking to see how quick can we turn these things around. I mean, in business, time is money, and long delays is a turn off, and we have always tried to make sure that we are proactive. We try to assist, we try to facilitate, we try to be business friendly, to put it that way. So those are the sectors that we think would carry the economy in a major way: the tourism, financial services, and also the construction sector.
Okay, great. Now we are seeing quite a number of new business opening up here on Nevis, and we are also seeing steady growth in the employment levels, which clearly suggests that we are moving in the right direction. Barring any unforeseen circumstances such as hurricanes, earthquakes, fires, or anything of the sort, do you see this pattern continuing through 2025 and beyond?
Yeah, we expect to see this continue. The last 2 budget cycles, we have focused a lot on employment, because when we realize that we are seeing increase in the number of things. We are seeing increase in the number of employers. We are seeing increase in the number of persons employed. And we are also seeing increase in the average wage rate earned by person. These are indicators that your economy is really moving, because these are the things that tell you that something is happening within your economy. If persons are finding jobs, and it was interesting to note the number of persons who are holding multiple jobs, because what we realized, we had more jobs than persons, which means that some persons are holding 2 and 3 jobs. Some may say it's a good thing, some may say it's a bad thing, but at the end of the day, persons will hold 2 and 3 jobs because they are comfortable with it. And I don't think it's a case where people are doing these things because they are being forced to do so. It's something they are comfortable with. It is not unusual. Our people go into countries overseas and we carry 3 and 4.
Yep.
It's just part of it. I mean, you need something to keep you active. You have a passion for it. You work a full day and then you go to the hotel and the restaurant in the night to work. It's a passion you have for it. It's a love you have for it. And so we are seeing these things which tell us that the economy is moving. Things are happening within the economy. In terms of the number of businesses as well, a lot of that is spurring from the fact that we continue to create a business-friendly environment, easy to open business. And kudos to the Premier some years ago when he approached the Taiwanese for grant funding for our small businesses, because we recognize that a small business going to a financial institution, to put it how we normally put it, somebody at 25 with a business idea and have no security, no collateral, have nothing, go to a bank, they're going to ask you what you have to put in. So when we took this approach of funding to SIDO, we wanted to stimulate ideas for persons who have the idea, want to go into business, but didn't have the security that a financial institution would ask for. And so we accommodated a number of persons through the loan funding which we got from the government of Taiwan to stimulate activities for our small business. And so we have continued to see significant growth in the number of small business registration in the economy. And they always say to you, small business is the engine of growth, because these are normally the businesses that stand the time. These are the last to leave when the economy gets bad. Bigger businesses, when the economy starts to get bad, they want to leave. Small businesses always stay. And so we thought we had a role to propel them forward and push them forward. What we have also tried to do at SIDO is to try to get people to be creative, to move away from the buying and selling. We saw the study trend where somebody wanted to get in business, so look down the road and see where somebody else is doing the same thing. Now, if 12 you go into the same area, you're diluting. And at the end of the day, both of you can end up failing because it's the same customer base you are looking toward. We are saying to our people, be creative. Just put your mind to it, and it amazes you how you can come up with new creative ideas that can make a difference. We also said to people when they're trying to go into business, look at the major sectors: tourism, construction, financial services. How you can position a business to benefit from these. And these are the critical things, because there are some large entities who don't want to get into some of the ancillary services. You take Four Seasons, for example. When Four Seasons started, guest services, organizing of events and so on used to be there. After a while, they realized, well, if you push these things off, and you have some person who created businesses to support these. The important thing when you do that, you have to be reliable, because when Four Seasons put you out as the entity that can provide these for customers, you have to be able to hold your end up.
Yes.
And by doing that, you can benefit. So we are asking our people to be creative. Look at the main sectors and see where you could create spin-off businesses and make them viable, because large entities may not necessarily want to carry the weight of these things. If you notice, for example, some businesses used to have cleaners. Nowadays, they are contracting out these cleaning services.
Yes.
And so all of these spin-off create number of small businesses. Yes. And so those small businesses, SIDO is there to help you to get started. But I must remind businesses as well, the money at SIDO, they are not grant money. Once you borrow the loan, we expect you to do what is necessary to repay. Too often we have the problem where people come and they want the loan, but they have not properly conceptualized what they want to do. And we continue to say to people as well, a better way to start small and go than to try to jump into it large scale even before you yourself have an understanding of it. And then you find yourself 2-3 years in difficulties, business failing, you have a loan which become a millstone around your neck with all the other things you have. So it's easier for you to get into it. As you go, you expand. As you grow, you add. And by the way, you can move from what we call a micro-organization to a medium size and get up to a much larger organization.
True. The City Island Administration has been doing quite a bit for the small businesses on Nevis, and yet we keep hearing some persons, of course, they have their own agenda for doing it, saying that there's no help for the small businessman. But you have just outlined a number of areas where the businesses are being helped, small business people are being helped here on the island of Nevis. Now, Mr. Dore, we are hearing of the possible startup of works on the Scarborough International.
Before you move to that, on the issue of small business, I think part of the challenges for small businesses is really trying to understand what they do. Because you set up yourself in business and you ask them how you come up with this price. They look to see what the competitor down the road is selling for, and they drop the price. You need to look at your cost structure, because everybody's cost structure is going to be different. And what we find, some person in business is almost like they want everything to be free. So they bring things in at the port they don't expect to pay. But the amount you pay at the port need to be factored into your selling price.
Sure.
And therefore you need to look at your overall costs in order to determine your selling price, to ensure that you are selling at the correct level. Now, if you having done that and you recognize that you are still at a loss, it means that you need to go back and look at your cost structure. Maybe some areas where you can cut costs. Because the more you can cut costs, the larger the profit for you. You may not be in a position to move the sales price, but if you can go and cut the costs, and basically not because you have custom to buy from one supplier, it doesn't mean that you're locked into the supplier for life. You need to shop around. The internet is there. I mean, nowadays it's quite easy to get things shipped into Nevis, whether via tropical, via mailboxes and so on, and look to see where you can get the same good quality items at a cheaper price, because each time you lower your costs, you're actually increasing your profit margin.
Sure.
So rather than crying out that when they come, there's nothing for small businesses because you have to pay high amount at the port. Of course, if you're paying high amount at the port, it's because the value of the item you're bringing in is high, because the custom duty is calculated on the value of the item. You need to start to shop around to see where you can get similar item or even substitute items at cheaper price, so that you can lower your overall cost structure, and then you can be in a better position to manage your business and to enjoy the benefit from being in your business.
Let me ask you something. Does the Ministry of Finance put on seminars or workshops for small business people so you could educate and enlighten them like you just did here and there?
Yeah, we do a lot of that at SIDO. We call it business counseling. As a matter of fact, at SIDO, each business who is listed at SIDO, and we are up until this point, we have not have all small businesses listed, because we tend to have only those who came to SIDO for financing. Each business has what we call a business development officer attached to them, who take them through these processes, review the situation from time to time. And we are saying to small businesses, if you have challenges, reach out to your business development officer. Try to see how they can help you. Too often we find people wait until they are too far in trouble to seek help. From the time you realize that what you have is not working, you have to change course. It doesn't make sense for you to continue along the same trend if it's not working. And reach out for help. There are a number of other people within the economy who have some business ideas as well, who have experienced business person who can reach out to and get some ideas to help you turn you around. So we do provide that both in-house and through various seminars. And the Taiwanese has been helping us as well over the years with some of those training to help our small businesses to get the level of knowledge necessary to keep them going.
Okay, great. Now, I was asking earlier, and we are hearing of the possibility, a possible startup of works on the Vance W. Army International Airport, the startup of works on the new wing at the hospital, some possible exploration work to be done on the geothermal project, among other things. How do you see this impacting the job market here in the island of Nevis? If those things
will definitely impact the job market. If you start to look at the proposed works at the Vance W. Army International Airport, the proposed works there is to expand the runway to accommodate larger aircraft and to build up our private jet facility, because we know a number of our persons at Four Seasons, for example, their jets are parked over in St. Kitts or they're parked in St. Martin and so on. And so if you can attract that kind of business over here, again, it would be economic activity for the island, and still have spin-off businesses, because these jets, when they come, somebody has to clean them, and all of those things would create new businesses spin-off coming from this. So we expect that once that project gets in full swing and we're able to complete it, it will be a significant economic benefit for the island of Nevis in terms of passenger movement, occupancy at our hotels and so on. And our ability to, for example, to attract large groups for group function, because these people can now fly directly in and out of Nevis for the various group functions. So we expect a lot of benefit from that. Same thing with the hospital wing. Once that's completed, that would increase our health capabilities, and so a number of additional services we can provide to our people from those facilities.
Now, we all set goals, Mr. Dore, each year that we would like to accomplish. When it is all said and done, what will make 2025 a good year for you as the PS of Finance?
2025 it look promising, and if we were to be able to achieve the number of development that we are proposing, all of these, of course, will translate into a few things. One, improvement in employment. And once person that working, person will be happy, they'll spend, the economy will turn around. We continue to see the economy grow from strength to strength once we're able to do that. If we can improve our health capabilities, of course, a healthy population is good, and having all the necessary health structures in place is good for your population as well. We can actually have person coming in to benefit from these, which again would increase our tourism capability. Because once they come in, they have to eat at our restaurant, they have to stay in our hotels and so on. So all of these would have the cumulative effect of pushing our tourism sector from year after year, increasing our numbers as we go along.
Speaking of tourism, tourism is always a fickle industry, but it is also a safe bet once we don't encounter any unforeseen circumstances that could derail our efforts. Our service industry is expanding with each passing year. It has long been our number one money earner here in Nevis. Do you see this sector reaching a level where it can be construed as a major cash cow for the Nevis Island Administration?
It can. It was heading there prior to COVID. Truth is, 2018, 2019 was the largest bump we were seeing in tourism. Then COVID came and it kind of put a damp on it. We are now seeing some turnaround, and we believe that in the next 2 to 3 years we can get our tourism numbers up to the level where we were projecting to be prior to COVID. Both in terms of hotel occupancy, in terms of cruise, in terms of other spin-off investment in real estate, villas, that sort of thing. And so we expect those can have that effect coming out of it. So tourism, we continue to nurture it. We know it is fickle. It can be affected by hurricane, and as a matter of fact, we thought at one point hurricane was the only thing that could have damaged it. And we realize now pandemic can have a greater effect than even hurricane. So we have to guard against these things, and while we project that we can grow, we still have to bear in mind that one little misstep in the area of pandemic can turn it around. And so there's not much we can do to prevent those things other than try to put some mitigation factors in place, and that when we see these things emerging in other countries, we take the necessary step to monitor our people coming in such that the effect is not too great on our economy.
Sure. Now, I mentioned earlier some of the capital projects that are earmarked for 2025, but we all know that is all based on whether funding is available. How confident are you that at least a few of those capital projects, if not all, will get off the ground in 2025?
Well, each year we project that at least 60 to 75% of what we have budgeted will get started. So that has been the benchmark we've been using, and so we expect that this year a similar thing would occur, where that number of projects would get moving. Of course, it's limited to funding, and as I mentioned earlier, we'll not be reckless. If we can't come up with the funding, we're not going to just start the project just for the sake of starting it. We have to ensure that we can complete it. What we probably will have to do, where funding is not available, we'll downsize the project in terms of what we can achieve in a given year and move it into the next year as a priority. What we always try to do is any project that got started and never get completed, we try to deal with those first in the new year before we take on new ones.
Okay. Great. Now, are there any other new initiatives or new areas of growth on the horizon that we may not be aware of?
Coming out of COVID, we ventured into what we call filming. And you remember that we did a couple of movies and movies as a starter. And so this is one sector which we think that we can still push in terms of a viable a viable area that we can venture into. So this is one of the new things we are looking at. We had the services of MSR Media. They basically showed us that in Nevis we had some acting skill, because a number of our people had key roles during that period, both as actors, directors, and a number of other things. A number of businesses developed out of it as well, because a lot of the makeup artists, our local people provided those services. So we now realize that this is a sector that we need to nurture, not just because it brings money directly, but because it helps us to spin off into other businesses and help our people to bring out their natural ability.
Sure.
And so this is one area which we are looking at to move forward into the new year. We continue to reach out to a number of filming entities to try to entice them to come to Nevis to set up here and do some filming. We have some good sites which are available for filming. And since we already have the trained person from MSR, we believe that we have a start. And we continue to promote things like acting classes, dramatic classes, and so on, to develop our people capabilities, so that when we're able to get another entity to come forward, we have the people to play the support roles in some of these things.
Okay. And finally, Mr. Dore, where do you see, it's a little early in the year because the year just starts, but where are we with regards to our economic standing at this point?
I think we are doing pretty well. In comparison to other countries, we are doing pretty well. Maybe sometimes because you're small size, you're able to control a little better than the larger ones. The fact that the economy is turning around, it means that people are relying less on government for some of the social things that, let's say after COVID, where we have to basically give a number of assistance to people at the lower level to basically help them with the basic things of life. And so as we turn around, we are seeing these, and so we expect that we're going to go from strength to strength, and people are going to start to take more of their responsibility, and government will have to provide less on these, which basically, again, come back to what we said earlier, where we gave a number of things. There was really a drain on government resources coming after COVID, but we had to do so because we had to keep the base of the economy together, so that when we turn the tide on COVID, we are not too far down. So we did a free initiative like for agriculture, because we had to encourage people to get into farming. We did a lot of things on the social side to help those who are really negatively impacted, who lost their jobs and that sort of thing. But we believe that as people start to find these things, we have to roll back some of these initiatives to basically help government. It is the role of every government to do that. You're going to go through a period where you're going to stretch yourself to basically keep the core of the economy together. And that as the economy starts to turn around, you basically now pull back on some of these things and allow the economy itself to generate it. And so as people started getting more and more employment, and actually moving from one employment to 2 and 3 jobs, then you know the economy is doing well, and you can start to roll back some of these programs because people are managing in the way. In the end, it comes down to a person to recognize that COVID would have taught you that you need to make some provision. We could no longer go to the stage where thinking that every day would be a good day. And we were all good up to 2019, and then COVID came. I think by now, person would have recognized they have to do some check on themselves to ensure that they make the necessary provision. So if something were to happen in the adverse way, they are not caught the same way a second time around. And I think our people have rise to the challenge, and I would be in a better position to face any similar pandemic or challenges that may come to impact their economic livelihood.
Well, Mr. Dore, I want to thank you very much for taking time out of your busy schedule to be with us this evening, and you did disseminate some real important information here this evening. And thank you for enlightening us as to the finances of the country, as to where we are as a country economically, and for bringing us some real hope going into 2025. I mean, there are those, like I said earlier, who like to give this negative vibes, but I got a lot of positive vibes from you this evening, and I'm sure our listeners and viewers also got some good positive information and education from you this evening. I want to give you your final comment for our listening and viewing audience at this time.
Yes, I would just wish to say that we are moving, we are trending upwards. We still have some way to go. Government itself still have some things they need to deal with, because one of the things that would make government very efficient is where you can start to reduce wastages, overpayment, duplicate payments, and so on. I think Nevis is not unique in that. Every government you have that, because sometimes government have to take on the role of being a real social partner. And so sometimes some of the things that we are seeing, you would wonder if government should be doing it. But government has got to look out for the interests of all. Where we have to now get better as is to ensure that when we do these things, it really goes to the person who really need and can have the maximum benefit from these things, as opposed to issue them equally, and then those who really don't need them, it doesn't have the same economic value as somebody who are really much lower down. And so once we're able to do some of these things, I think our people will recognize that we are trying to do the best we can do within the limitation that we have of limited resources and so on. I would be more appreciative of what government is doing.
Thank you very much for that, Mr. Dore. Folks, we have come to the end of another edition of our Government at Work program. Join us again next week when we shall do it all over again. Do enjoy the rest of the evening's programming. Then have a pleasant night's rest. Good night.